Hello everyone, welcome to day 69 of my 100-day project. It is the second to last day that I'm working in drawing oils. And my initial thought was to take some quinacridone red and tone the surface. I'm working on another jute panel, so very, very textured. I want to tone it first. And as I was doing it, I saw a face. So it was like, oh, well, here we go. This is what we're working with today. And that's what I went with. And I've just been drawn to these warm and cool color combinations, this like orange and purple. So for whatever reason over these last few days, that just seems to be my go-to. I just keep reaching for them over and over and over again. Not sure why. It's just the vibe. And this one was interesting. So I decided to, instead of starting with a lot of shadows, I kind of got in some of the shadows with the quinacridone red. I kind of sketched in the features. And I went straight to kind of the lighter tone. And I really like that approach with these because while they layer, sometimes I feel like my lighter colors get muddy when I try to layer them over the darker shadows. So I thought, okay, let me get in and block in some of those lighter shades first, and then I can always make things darker. So here I use the Brilliant Yellow Extra Pale with the quinacridone red, and it made this really nice kind of peachy color. And then I'm using quinacridone magenta to darken up some of the shadows. And I'm using my silicone brush there to really work it into the texture because there's so much texture. And when I use these sticks, they're so soft, they really just hit the high points of the surface. So I really need to use something to blend them in. If I just let them sit on the high points of the surface, I lose all my detail. And if I press harder with the sticks to get them into the surface, then there's way too much paint. So these are things that I've learned along the way using these on these more textured surfaces. And I have to say, I really do like the texture, the way it looks in the end. So I'm just getting in some additional highlights in the neck, kind of building out the form for the neck and kind of getting that in there. One of the things I notice is, so I'm using this cherry absinthe color, which I really like. It's like this purpley brown kind of color. It goes really well with these warm undertones. But one of the things I notice with these larger drawing oils where I can't really get super fine detail, my eyes are really big. I tend to paint kind of big eyes to begin with because I really enjoy painting eyes. So I tend to make them bigger. But I've noticed with these drawing oils, they just kind of get bigger on their own because I'm trying to get the marks in there. I'm trying to get the detail. And what I decided to do, this is Paynes Gray, I decided to use my skewer to scrape off some of that pigment and then place it onto the surface instead of trying to use the stick itself. For these small little detailed areas, I'm finding that works really well as opposed to trying to get enough pressure to get the pigment on there without it squishing everything away. So I'm doing that with the titanium white now to add in highlights. The other thing I like about it is it makes it very dimensional. So if you're looking at this in person, you'll see those places where I've done that. It's thicker, and I really like that because it adds more to, it draws more attention to those areas, which I really like. I'm using the celadon green as the background. So I want something neutral. The green is going to be a good complement to the warm reds and then that purpley color that I've got in her face. And I just let her hair be really big and wild. Like, That's just who she is. And she's got this interesting shape on the top. It almost looks like an animal sitting on top of her hair. And I thought that was kind of cool too. So I left that. And then I decided, let me bring in some sap green. I wanted to make the right side of the background a little bit darker. And I brought in that sap green, and it's too warm. It's a beautiful color, but it's just a little bit too warm. And I wanted it to be a little bit more neutral. So I'm going in and I'm just adjusting some of the edges, bringing in a little bit of light to that side of the face. And then going back in and adding more of that detail. I really want her eyes to be the focal point. So I want to make sure they have harder edges than the other parts of her face. And with these super, super textured surfaces, a lot of these edges are soft because they just sort of blend in there. And so I'm doing my best to kind of make her pupils harder edged so they stand out more. And look at how big her eyes have gotten. They've gotten really big. And the shadows around them are kind of dark too. I also kind of scratched in some lines in her forehead and around her eyes just to give her like some expression. She looks like maybe she's a little bit worried, a little bit scared, a little bit kind of not sure what's going on. And I added a little bit of quinacridone magenta to that sap green to darken it, but also to neutralize it. And I like that much, much better. It was competing too much with the brightness of her hair. Her hair is very, very bright. So this is where I landed. I used the skewer to get some detail around her eyes. I added some of that sap green in her irises around the edges, and then really used that cadmium orange around her pupil to make that pop. I thought about putting in like some teal or something to really bring that contrast. And I thought, I've been doing that a lot lately. Let me just kind of do this and see where it lands. So I relied on harder edges to make her eyes stand out more. And they did get a little bit big, but again, maybe she's worried about something or nervous or anxious or a little bit scared. Who knows? We can make up our own stories about what's going on with her. But there we go, day 69, one more day of oil stick, and then we're off to gouache, which is going to be a big mental shift, going back to brushes. And gouache is its own animal. So stay tuned for that. I hope you're doing well. Take care of you, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.